What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fresh Podcast, where we bring everything fresh in entertainment. I'm your host, Drew Brumfield, and join with me again is the full crew again. First up, we got Seth. Seth, how are you doing?
Hello there.
General Kenobi, how are you doing? All right, and we also got Robert. Robert, how are you doing?
Seth said hello there, so now I don't know how to introduce myself.
You should have just
say
said hello
hello
there
too.
again, and we would just kept the train going. We could have just did it again.
Just move on.
Okay, all right. And also join with us is our resident Star Wars nerd, Randy. Randy, how are you doing?
Kenobi.
There you go. You got it. You did it. He did the
Got it.
thing.
Randy
you guys.
spawned
Yeah.
like 4 arms out of his chest cavity just to make that line happen. So I hope you all
Yes.
appreciate that.
Randy can't do the
That's
rest
a
of the
lot
pod.
of effort. I
Yeah,
don't break
Randy
it out
can't-
very often.
He can't do
It's
the
a good party
podcast. He can't do the podcast anymore because he now has to go to the hospital. Because he has 4 arms growing out of his rib cage.
Yeah, that's a real problem, Randy. You should get that checked out.
Yeah, you should like this podcast
Yeah.
is not that boring.
I paid a lot of money for it.
Anyway, this podcast is a little different from our normal ones. We're trying something different. Normally we end the podcast with our fresh picks of the week, but this time that's just gonna be the whole podcast, is talking about each of our fresh picks and just kind of talking about whatever we feel like talking about. So very
It's kind of like
nonchalant.
the oops, all fresh picks.
Yeah, there you go. Honestly, that's about to be the name of the podcast because I was struggling with multiple names in my head.
Yeah.
That's what we're gonna do. It's gonna be oops, all fresh
Hey,
picks.
I actually contributed something.
Yeah,
Nice.
good job.
Oops, all fresh.
It's all fresh. Before we start, as I say at the beginning of most of these podcasts, if you like these podcasts but you kind of want them in more shorter forms, we have a TikTok page and post YouTube shorts all the time. Our most recent one is from Robert himself, talking about, is the original Resident Evil 4 still fresh? So Robert, thank you for posting that up. It's a great video, and please go like, share, and support that video.
Yes, I'm pretty proud that it turned out as well as it did, since that was my first time doing like a YouTube short.
Yeah,
So it was.
It
a fun
looks really
process.
it
It
is
has
good.
like a professional quality to it, and if no one goes out and checks it out, I'm gonna personally come to your house and I'm gonna make you sit down and watch this short. So help me God.
Threats.
I
That's
got
how
that
we're
media
gonna get
degree
through.
for something, guys.
Yeah.
College.
I did it. I did the college.
All right. But continuing with the actual podcast. So we're just kind of free forming it and talking about whatever. So I will go ahead and throw it to the man whose idea this was, Seth. What have you been
Me?
What have you been doing? What have you been keeping
This is
fresh?
pretty.
Yeah.
Over the weekend, I saw a couple of movies in theaters.
Nice.
And I saw one special movie for my best friend Alex. It was her birthday, so we went out and checked it out. It was a promise that she made me do as soon as the first trailer dropped for it, that Seth, we got to go watch it. And it was the Barbie movie. I went and saw
Fantastic
it,
movie.
and honestly, believe the hype. It's a really good movie. It's just such a blast. Have any of you guys seen the Barbie film yet?
I have
I've
seen
not
it.
seen it, but I do kind of want to see it. I haven't seen it.
It is so good. Cillian Murphy does a great job. It gets into like I'm not even gonna keep this bit going. I'm sorry, I don't have it in me. But no, it's such a fun film. It's been a while since I've seen a movie just this unhinged.
Yeah.
But it absolutely just embraces just the sheer mess of it, and as a result, it just makes a really funny, very surprising film that also has some pretty good like little emotional parts in it as well. I think it's a film that's coming out knowing that, like, hey, talking about Barbie and what it means for, like, women in society is a little bit messy, because it's like, does Barbie make young girls have impression, like, how do I word this? Like, very negative
Unrealistic
impressions of,
goals. Like,
unrealistic impressions of like where they should be in their life, or like their image, and the movie tackles that, I think, in a really interesting way. It's just super fun. I don't know how the trailers were, because I only really watched the first one, but this movie it's full on PG-13, and so it's going to be getting into very like raunchy style of humor, and I love it for that.
Yeah.
All the actors are great. My husband and wife are in this film, Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. They're both fantastic. I'm really proud of them.
All right, Seth, you need to calm down. All right, that is my husband and wife. All right.
She's all of our husbands and wives.
You know what? Fair.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a Ken and Barbie in their lives.
Yeah.
You are Knuff. It's such a good film. I really can't get into too much about it specifically because I really don't want to spoil anything, but it's so good. It tackles all these subject matters in like both touching and just goofy ass ways. And the best part is you could just feel that everybody is not wasting everybody. It doesn't feel like anyone's doing this for a paycheck. Everybody's bringing their A game here, and they're all just having a blast. I think one of the best running gags in the film also is the fact that like there's like a weird Barbie doll or Ken doll or something drop in. It's just like the movie always makes a point like, oh yeah, that was a real thing. And it's like, really? And you look up, it's like, oh shit, that is a real thing. They actually did do that doll. It's like, what the fuck were they thinking?
They had a pregnant Barbie. They thought that would sell.
That's honestly probably the least weird of the Barbies. That's the funniest part. But yeah, it's a great film. I do recommend you guys like checking it out.
Yeah. So a lot of I know a lot of people, including myself, kind of like went to I go see almost everything because I really like movies and I like going to see, especially with like the Oppenheimer hype. But Oppenheimer because Oppener would sound really weird. But I went to see it because like, okay, I gotta do it for the meme. But was very pleasant surprised that like it's a very funny movie. You still go for the memes if that's what you want to do, but it actually is like very cleverly like written. Like it did not need to be this well written and like well acted for it to sell well. It could have been like a shoehorn thing and little girls would have loved it. But it actually is like it actually has like a message and very like well acted and it's hilarious and a good like commentary on everything. It's like, why is Barbie doing this? Why are you doing the most for Barbie right now?
It's way funnier and way smarter than it has any right to be.
Like to give you an idea, like Will Ferrell is in the movie and I'm one of the people that think Will Ferrell is hilarious. But he honestly gets like Will Ferrell's the one getting like outshined here because there's so many funny moments from it. Yeah, like 6 quotes just ran through my head right now. I couldn't think of one. But yeah, definitely go see it. And to all the guys out there that think they're too manly to see Barbie, if you don't go see it, it actually just proves that you're that insecure about your own masculinity, which makes you less manly. So be a man and go watch Barbie.
Yeah, and also like that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Drew, because what if you think like, oh, it's maybe this film isn't gonna speak to me, it's only gonna speak to women's issues, which maybe you need to grow a little bit of empathy, maybe that's your problem. But also
women's
like,
issues are human issues.
Yeah,
I support women's rights and women's wrongs.
This film does talk about like men's issues too. I think the overall message of this film is like, whether you're male, female, or whatever, like society places unrealistic pressures on all of us to conform to it, and nobody wins because of that. So I think this movie is it's a very positive film. I like it. Plus also the iconic line, I love this line now, every night is boys nice.
Every night is boys nice.
I'll have to use that when Will gets home and he's just like, really? You're playing Smite with Drew? And I'm just like, every night's boys' night.
Every night's boy house. This is
every night is Osborne night.
This podcast is our what is it? Macho Casa
Mojo Dojo Casa House.
That's what our Mojo Dojo Casa House. Where we have giant horses and leather jackets and guitars. Yeah.
I'm not gonna spoil this joke. Although one of my favorite jokes was another line that Ryan said. He's just like, I'll be honest, I don't like the patriarchy that much. Whenever I learned it wasn't about horses,
I kind of lost interest. I love.
It's like honestly, Ryan Gosling, same.
Dude, when he walked around and it's like, I would like to be a doctor. Do you have a medical degree? No, you don't understand. I'm a man. Yeah, that doesn't cut. That's not enough nowadays. Can I speak to a real doctor? And like he's talking to like a female doctor. He's like, I'm a real doctor.
I am a doctor.
And he's like, no, like an actual doctor. And he sees like a male nurse and he goes, oh, doctor, over here.
God, so
It's
good.
So that joke's in the trailer. I don't feel bad about spoiling it out, but like there's so much.
I remember I heard a kind of one thing that's going to be an annoyance, and I'm glad I'm not in the theater space anymore, is the unironic and insane number of tenors that are now going to use this like "I'm just Ken" as their audition
anywhere
song now.
else I'd be a 10.
Yeah. So, yay for me not being in the theater scene anymore, because I
Oh,
think
man, I
I
never
would
thought
get
about that,
very
like-
tired of the number of people using that song.
But they're just kin. We're all kin.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
You have to find your. I do. God, that song and that dance number like is amazing. It's so
The use of
stupid.
music is really great.
The use of music is great, and also like the other thing that like I want to bring attention to. I feel like a lot of people don't bring up is the narrator is also one of the funniest characters.
Oh yeah,
The narrator is
that's
hilarious.
fine.
There's one that it's slight spoilers, but you should see the movie anyway. Is like when Margot Robbie's having like a breakdown, she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm ugly, I'm hideous, I'm terrible," and the narrator goes, "Note to the filmmaker: this is very hard to bring this point across when your main lead is Margot Robbie, the most beautiful woman in the world."
It was really good.
It was
Oh,
very
God.
funny.
Go watch
Oh,
it.
God.
It's definitely worth the time.
Yeah. Bringing up, I'll ask Seth. This isn't my pick, but I do have to ask Seth. Given that like these two movies came out simultaneously, which again, I want to point out that this is just the Doom Animal Crossing thing, but with movies. That's all this
Yes.
is.
Yes.
Did you watch Oppenheimer?
I did not, although I do
Okay.
plan on going to watch it at some point. No, the other movie I watched was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem. That was the other one I watched over the weekend.
All right, I am seeing that tomorrow. So that one, if you spoil, because I am a huge Ninja Turtles fan. Like I'm going to that theater with the socks, the shirt, the everything. I'll have the underwear on, but no one's gonna know about that unless they listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
So that one, if you spoil it, you will get kicked off the podcast.
I won't
Yeah.
spoil any of it. Don't worry.
All right, good.
I hope you enjoy it. Like I really do. I had a great time with it too.
It looks
Um,
good. I like the fact that like this is the first, as someone who's been like a TMNT fan for a very long time, as Randy can attest. He's known me
Yeah.
for my entire life. It's amazing that this is the first time where like in my memory that they actually look and sound like teenagers. Like every other
yeah.
iteration, it's like, yeah, they're kind of old. They act and have like a little, except for Michelangelo, have a bit more of a maturity level. These actually look and sound and are played by kids, which I really appreciate. Yeah.
It works with the film. It does a really good job. One thing I feel like I want to get ahead of and address is like this is a film that definitely has more of those kinds of like modern type humor. So yes, they talk about TikTok. Yes, there's twerking and like little jokes. But I think because of the actors and stuff, it really sells the fact that like they're kids. They're
Yeah.
really young. One thing I want to ask you, Drew, is this is not a spoiler, but you probably guessed from the trailers. This is more of like another kind of origin story type deal for the Turtles,
Yeah.
and it feels like there's I haven't watched enough of it to really be a judge of it, but it feels like in my experience, there's just a lot of like
there's a lot of
TMNT movies that are about their origin.
Yeah.
Does that does that discourage you at all?
No, not really, because like that's the thing with like TMNT is like, I will say there are some like the 2006 one. I like that. Or no, it was 2013 was the 3D one. That one wasn't, which was a nice refreshing thing. But like so many of them are origin stories. But that's the thing. The origin part of their story really does take like for most films like 15 minutes. They're just like they got dipped in news. They're here. The movie. And also like it's every time it's slightly different. It's not like Batman where it's like, okay, I get it. His parents got shot. Or Spider-Man, I get it. Ben's dead. Stop showing me this exact same thing every time. at least with Turtles, everything is kind of different sometimes. Like in some versions, Splinter is a human first that got turned into a rat, or some version he's a rat that got turned into a human. Some versions, even though I'm not the biggest fan of this, April used to own the Turtles before they got turned into these things. And some versions they like never met them.
Into these monstrosities.
Into these, I say
Yeah.
that because that's the Michael Bay version. But like that's the thing about the Turtles is like, and kind of their what makes them good is that every single time they're reintroduced, they're slightly different and slightly changed, so you can, you know, look at them with like a fresh thing. There are still like some of the key elements, but sometimes it's like, you know, the original cartoon with like them and Shredder are a bit more goofy. The 2006 cartoon where like they're slightly more serious and, you know, action based. Cool, yeah. And then there's the Michael Bay ones, which are just, you know, visual garbage.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's
I'm
those
not,
movies
I'm
probably
not going to
defend
defend
you.
it.
No, there's not. But I will say this, just because there is probably never another time for me to talk about this. Do you guys want to know, unironically, and I say this as a big Ninja Turtles fan, the best Ninja Turtles movies? There's
Yeah.
the
Lay it
so
on
a
us.
lot of people say it is like it's the one where like the big crossover where they bring like the original shows together. No, the best Ninja Turtles movies, unironically, is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles versus Batman. I shit you not.
Oh.
That is the best iteration of almost all four of the Turtles. It's the best iteration of Damian Wayne. It does a great job like mixing these characters together and like having fun with it. It's fantastic. It has obviously Batman fighting Shredder, Leonardo fighting Ra's al Ghul. There's a lot of funny scenes with like Joker and Mikey, Damien, and Raphael, and like a lot of things like that. And also like the pairing of Michelangelo and Batman is hilarious. There's just a lot of like very fun moments between that. There's a lot of like heart and soul into that movie, and I feel like a lot of people write it off because it's titled TMNT versus Batman, even though they fight at the beginning, but it's not long. But
Oh,
that's
I
my
didn't even know it was
favorite.
called like Versus. That's interesting.
It might be. I don't remember if it's versus or not or and, but like it was originally a comic that got turned into a movie, but it's actually like unironically a really good movie.
That's awesome. One thing I want to add on to, because I just thought of this while you were talking, also about the Mutant Mayhem film, is the composers behind it. It is Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, which are both former members of Nine Inch Nails. They do a really good job with the soundtrack. I think it's going for a more like because of their roots with Nine Inch Nails, it makes sense. They're going for more of like a punk sort of industrial rock feel to it. While there's no original songs with necessarily lyrics in this movie, you can definitely get the more like grungy vibes in it, and I do kind of like that a lot.
Yeah.
I fucks with that.
And also another thing with art style is I know looking on the surface, people are going to inevitably draw like comparisons to Spider-Verse, which is good. I'm
gonna say if you're gonna be compared to a movie, it might as well be one of the best animated movies ever.
Yeah,
So.
and I think this film not only takes the things that like it learned from Spider-Verse, but I also personally believe it does a really good job of bringing its own style, because like it feels, the animation in this looks rough in a very good way, like a lot of like sketched on details, and with the mix of like really good lighting just gives it a very like sort of it like I said, just like a messy feel to the movie, but in a good way.
It
like
almost
it's not
looks,
like on
like
accident.
on purpose. Yeah.
It's like a stylized thing.
It almost when I look at it, it looks a lot like how do I describe, like I want to say claymation but not, but like you know what I mean, where it's like
It does have
very
that sort of
like
stop motion feel.
yeah.
In motion. Yeah.
So I don't know, it looks good. Also if you want to know, they're really good Turtles movie, if you're like a big longtime fan, Turtles Forever is the one where like it crosses over with like a bunch of different things. So yeah, if you have any more Turtles questions, I know a lot about this.
So that was interesting that you bring it up because I always thought like Splinter was always a human turned into a rat. But yeah, like this film, so he's not the first because like yeah, this one where by the way he's voiced by Jackie Chan and he does a really
which
good
is
job
good.
here.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
dope.
Yeah, Splinter here is he starts off as a rat and then is mutated.
So yeah,
he-
that version of him originally started in the first live action Ninja Turtles movie, where he was a rat first and then became a human. Like his master died and then became a human, and then it just kind of depends on the version, like of which one it is. Is he a human or a rat first?
All right. By the way, this Splinter, I know I said it already, but he rocks. One, Jackie Chan is very good in this role. I really like his relationship with the turtles. I mean, I feel like almost every iteration of Splinter does a really good job of depicting his relationship with his sons, essentially. But I really think he also has the best action scene in this movie too. Like it's so freaking good.
All right. Well,
and I won't get any further than that because I know Drew doesn't want any spoilers.
For fear of getting spoiled, I'm going to move on. Unless there's something else, because I don't want to ask too much.
I hope you like it, and like for people who are going out to see this, just I want to throw this out there again with like the modern style humor with like the jokes about like TikTok and all that. I hope people like all because you may not be into it, just understand that this movie is also, it's for kids. I went and saw it and they had like a pretty decent sized theater and there were plenty of kids. And like, although I wasn't crazy about those jokes, the kids were laughing their ass off at it whenever they called something sus. So it's like, hey, this movie, remember this is a kid's film, guys.
Maturity is realizing that at a certain point, the movies aren't made for you anymore.
That's what you can still enjoy them.
This is the exact same conversation I had to have with my friends about the Super Mario movie. And I was like, guys, this isn't for us anymore. We're in our 20s.
It's for kids.
Which I'm not saying
kids
wasn't
things. Super Mario darker?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's like the thing. It's like
Super Mario.
It's
like why did it have more of a complicated
people kind of like force their own expectations on like these movies. But that's the thing is like you kind of have to recognize like you need to take yourself out of it sometimes and go, okay, who's the target demographic? Right, TMNT, a very kid-centric property for lack of a better term. That's who do you think they're going to try to make that movie to appeal for?
Me.
The people that were
I'm
kids
the fan.
15 years ago.
I'm the kid.
Me, the 24-year-old.
I'm the guy.
Everything must be made specifically for me and my demographic, and there cannot be any cringe or the movie's automatically bad.
Yes. What and also what's cringe, by the way? Whatever I determine it to be.
It's just like it's almost like this movie isn't made entirely for you, fuckers.
And again, I want to clarify something. Just because something made for a younger generation doesn't mean it's like it has to be stupidly written. Like you can find good things, but people need to calm down.
Yeah, and here's the thing: like there's plenty of things for adults to animate. There's yes, there's like the modern humor, but there's plenty of like good jokes in there, good writing, good storytelling. Animation is like great. I really like the music. There's plenty of things to enjoy. So if you're gonna take issue with a couple of things, you need to get over yourself. I haven't really seen much talk about it online because I just don't really go looking for it for this movie. But like I can just imagine like some cringe lord just freaking out about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I will be seeing it probably before this podcast is uploaded. So is there any other topics that you want to talk about before we skedaddle and go to our next one?
One more thing, I guess.
Okay.
I have recently finished a game that never before has a phrase inspired so much fear yet excitement in the same time as me as this game did with that phrase. It's pizza time. I have been playing.
Oh boy.
I have played through and I have finished Pizza Tower, and I've got to say, it's the best Sonic game I've ever played in my life.
And it's supposed to be Wario Land or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I might have to check out Wario Land. It's the basic premise of Pizza Tower is you are going through the level, collecting the toppings that you need to get back, and then you reach the end where there's this pillar you have to break, and then you have to run all the way back through the level with a timer ticking down to your immediate doom. It is very stressful, but very fun. The motion just feels great. The music is obviously fantastic. Like when you hear the lyrics, "It's time to get funky," you know it's time to get funky. So I like Pizza Tower. Peppino Spaghetti, that's the main character of Pizza Tower, is my spirit animal. He is a man powered entirely by stress. So good. It's such a good game. I love it.
Just like unlocked like a core memory as a kid where I like was playing Wario Land 4 on Game Boy, because like that's essentially what this is like a spiritual successor to. And oh my god, some of those levels like I couldn't beat because you get to the end and then you have to like speed run your way back. So it's like the levels all getting warped and distorted. Yeah, like stressful music going. There's like a literal ticking time bomb. I was like, as a kid, that was fucking stressful.
Especially when the music kicks in. It both amps you up and makes you like an anxious mess. There's just such good design though. I love that, like the fact that like the game is constantly teaching you new movement things and new like things to mess around with each level, and then you just have to run back with it and use some of the knowledge that you obtained. It just makes for a fun experience. Pizza Tower is definitely going to be up there on my list by the end of this year as one of the best games out there, just because of how good and just everything is, like the animation and gameplay.
So is this like a really like old game, or is it
like an older game, but it's new. It came out weirdly. It came out the same time as like Hi-Fi Rush in January. So it came out very early on. It looks very good. I didn't actually add on to this. The art style looks very reminiscent of old Nickelodeon style cartoons, like Ren and Stimpy is the one that comes to my mind a lot. Ren and Stimpy, Cartoon Network stuff like Cow and Chicken. So it's very reminiscent, and like Rocko's Modern Life. It's very reminiscent of that kind of era of animation. So like it really is worth checking out. Like just for the final sequence alone is one of the coolest things I've seen in a video game, where it is literally taking everything that you've learned about the game and putting it to the test. So awesome game. I love Pizza Tower.
Interesting. Well, I'll have to look at it. As for me, I will give my pick real quick, and I think Robert will probably enjoy this one if it wasn't his. But with the Evolution 2023 tournament just wrapping up, a lot of fun fighting games have been getting resurfaced and new trailers, but I want to talk about the one that came out very recently. I've talked about it a few times already, but Street Fighter 6 is still amazing. It's still super fun. It's my first ever time playing a Street Fighter game, and I am having a blast with it. It took a while to kind of get into it, to learn the ropes, to learn, the mechanics and stuff, and the feel and the vibe of Street Fighter, because it's not like a Mortal Kombat game or an anime game where you're just like running all the time at your opponent, just rushing head first into them. There's actual strategy, and not to say that there was footsies in past games, but it's very much like long pokes and kind of like spacing out is really the name of the game. And it's been a lot of fun to play with and learn Street Fighter, and specifically with 6, its mechanics there's a lot of like new stuff, and it's like very intuitive to like however you want to play. You have a meter for both supers, but your other meter, the drive gauge, is for everything else. Your defensive stuff, impacts, EX moves. So it really just kind of tailors of like, you can play this game very differently and however you want to. Kind of the biggest example that like I can think of is there was in like the most recent tournament, Evo, which is like, but me and Robert have both watched and we're messing each other about. there were multiple like Ken players that were going through, and like, because Ken's a very kind of high tier character, him and Chun-Li and Cammy, they all are, but there were multiple people that were playing Ken, but very different play styles, like to the point where like if you took away the names at the top of the screen, I could tell you who is playing which character just by like their gameplay and like how they're moving around and what they're choosing to do.
Like, it's impressive that you say it too about Ken, because Ken's one of the more simpler characters.
That is not true, by
Like-
the way.
Like,
I have
is it not true?
no. After it's true at the start. You think it is at the beginning, but the more and more you dive into Ken, because I tried playing him, and the more you get into him, he actually is a lot harder to do play than you think.
Yeah, so I've only really touched like surface level with like Street Fighter 6.
But I think that's also like, that's just like Street Fighter in general. It seems easy at first, but once you start like getting into it, it's like, it's way more complicated than you think. Because Ken has what should in theory be easy. What's these Jinrai kicks in the corner, which is like his Rekka style kicks. And most of the time it's just like, you know, hit him, kick into DP. But because of like the timing of his like Jinrai kicks, and like if you do EX, you can get multiple kicks in a row, but it's hard to do. And it was something wild that even in like Evolution, which is like the top level of like people that play these fighting games, people are dropping Ken combos. But luckily he has like
a lot.
Luckily Ken has really good buttons, which is the easy part about him, that he can recover and it doesn't hurt him too bad. But it's wild to like see that, you know, he's not, you know, Robert's right, is like in the sense of like his very basic gameplay, he's not as complicated as like some characters like Chun-Li or Juri. But like once you start playing more and more into him, there's some like high execution stuff that like is very interesting with that. But I think that just kind of shows like to the strengths of like that character. And it's not just Ken, because I thought when I started playing Cammy that like, oh, she's a very low damage like character and she can't really do much. Then I started watching some of these like pro people play. I'm like, oh, well, that's a different combo, and the person that they're fighting is dead. It's just, it's just, oh, okay, never mind. Cammy isn't low damage. She's just the fastest character in the game and can do that as well.
She gets a lot of counter hits.
Yeah, I was like, oh, she gets a punish counter with her heavy punch, and that is 30% of their life. Wow. So it's wild to like after playing the game, and I think that's one thing about like fighting games and why I like it so much is like after you play a fighting game and then you go watch like a professional like tournament of it, you have so much more of an appreciation for what these people are doing, because you've tried doing that and have messed it up 50 times in training mode. And it's just like, it makes moments like that so much more exciting when like you've seen people drop this Ken combo in the corner 50 times, but when you get to, you know, top 6 or whatever, and the last Ken player alive finally hits it for like the game winning like set, it's like, it's just a great moment, and like something that really only fighting games can like do is this like this sense of like community and like competitiveness to it. I don't know, it's great. I love watching Evo, and Street Fighter 6 is like a great game, and I can't wait to keep watching more of it.
Yeah, I just remember I've played like several different fighting games kind of just as like a basic level. I've not gotten super invested into like any specific game, but just kind of looking at these major tournaments, like see like, oh, this guy plays, you know, Ken really good. He does all these crazy combos. I think I could do that. Then I go in and I'm like not able to do like half of what I saw this guy pull off. I'm like, oh my god, this guy's a fucking wizard.
This is like, oh, that's why he's there right now at that tournament.
That's why he's the guy.
That's why I'm sitting on my couch and this guy's on grand final stage of Evo.
Yeah. See, but like, that's the thing that I love about fighting games is like, at first you can't do it, and it's not like, you know, a normal video game thing where it's like, oh, you just level up and you get it. because the most satisfying thing in the world for me is like, for example, I was playing Rashid, the new character, and I'm having a lot of fun with him. I got him to gold. But I was in training mode. I was practicing his like level 2 tornado combos, which isn't hard to do if I can be in training mode and set it up. It's very hard to do when the opponent is like running around and being an idiot. And I'm like, I can't land it, and like the stress of the match gets to me. But like there's one time when I'm fighting a Blanca, and I hate fighting Blanca because I have no idea what that character does. And he's to this day confuses me. And so he jumps at me. I actually land do the level 2 super, land the big combo. I'm like, oh gosh, wait, what's my follow up? And but you still remember it, do it, and win the round. And that kind of like mid match, like I can't believe I actually hit the combo, or I can't believe I remembered the setup, or like I dodged this thing or read the opponent. Like that is such like a satisfying feeling. That was more just like fighting games in general, not just Street Fighter, but yeah, that's why play fighting games. Everyone listen to this podcast, go play a fighting game. You'll get what I'm talking about.
I mean, normally not someone for fighting games. I think the only one I've really played is I played Injustice and Injustice 2. But I know how insanely hype you are for Mortal Kombat 1 to come out. And like, I remember I was laying in bed watching the news trailer, and Will turns to me. He's just like, "Are you gonna get Mortal Kombat?" And I'm just like, "I don't know, man." He's like, "Oh, so you can just play Mortal Kombat with Drew as well?" And I'm just like, "Nah, he'll just kick my ass. It won't be fun. I'll just get my ass beat."
But Randy, that's the thing. If you keep playing it, eventually you'll start kicking my ass, and that'll be very satisfying for you. It's called character development.
Yeah, you
or I
gotta
could
have,
just
like,
not.
a training montage.
Yeah, I kind of understand Randy's feelings.
Yeah,
It's just
no, I
like
get
it to get that point.
It's
It takes, like, a
intimidating to get
certain time
into
and-
it.
Yeah,
It
that's
is.
it's
Yeah.
You got to put in a
investment.
lot of time.
that's something that you kind of have to know going into these fighting games is you got to have a lot of mental fortitude. You have to be willing to suck for 1,000 matches before winning one.
Yeah.
Like you gotta have to understand that this is a major learning process. You will lose. Some people will be more jerks than others about you losing, but you just gotta keep working at it.
Yeah.
And it's something that not just anyone can do. Coming as someone who played a lot of Smash Ultimate in college, sometimes taking a loss is pretty hard, especially if you've been like practicing a lot and you just still not good enough. It's something that you kind of have to have like an honest conversation with yourself about. Is like, can is this something I can really like mentally do? Because like even this is something that a lot of people, even like the top players of Evo, they have to have like the mental fortitude to push past the competition for that long and put up with so many losses, humiliations, what have you, to get to that point. It's it's something that if you do like competitive, you really kind of understand. Um, but a lot of these games, like nowadays, are definitely easier than others to get into.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
this is something Drew hasn't brought up with Street Fighter 6 in particular, is there's different control styles. So like a lot of like fighting games in the past, they can be kind of intimidating because their controls are kind of unintuitive if you don't play that kind of game a lot. But what Street Fighter 6 does is introduces a classic and modern type of control scheme, where the inputs are kind of like I want to say dumbed down, but they kind of are.
It's smash inputs. It's
like
forward
smash
or down
inputs,
it
yeah.
like a button.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's like
Yeah.
there's not as much
you're
of a
talking.
control. There's not as much of like a control learning curve. It's like
Yeah.
if you want to do like Hadouken, you don't have to do like the forward down forward motion.
Yeah. Quarter circle.
You just have to hit like right and Y or whatever. I don't play on it, but it's you don't have to do a lot of the motion inputs. You don't have to memorize as much like motions. You can kind of put more mental effort into kind of like figuring out how not to get like comboed like zero death or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about your moves as much as if you were playing like the classic controls.
You know what's something wild about that, Robert, is there actually was like someone who made like I think like top 6 in Evo, and they were using like a modern
Modern
control. Yeah. Now to be fair, I think they were still physically doing the motions because you can, and they mainly played on that to have one button supers to like react easier. But still, it shows like you can still learn this stuff. And they do have like systems in place for people who are like, yeah, it's hard. Even I struggle with like double quarter circle punch. Like that's hard to do, especially if I'm doing it backwards because my opponent's on the opposite side of me.
And you got to do that on reaction too.
Yeah, like it's a hard thing to do and a big ask for newcomers.
Yeah, I think one thing I would like to add on to this is like with just what you guys are talking about here with in terms of like learning a game and understanding it is I 100% believe this is you can literally get good at any game. I 100% believe it. It just depends on how much time. These games are purposely designed to that, and it really becomes more of a question of like, do you actually want to bother putting the time invested into it? It's like
yeah. It's like, why put the time into that when I could just continue to have Smite suck my life away?
Yeah, you could continue to put money in that. But it's something I got like a game I've been playing recently is like Ninja Gaiden, like Sigma. And a lot of people are like, oh, you think Dark Souls is hard? You should play Ninja Gaiden. It's so much harder. And it's like I've been playing it, and like, yeah, it's a difficult start at first, but over time and as I climb up the difficulties, I don't think it's that difficult. It's more just like you just have to spend the time to just learn about it. Weirdly enough, Ninja Gaiden does kind of have a lot of like how you play that game ends up being a lot of like how you do fighting games is what combos have safe animations, what are the recovery frames on like the enemies that you're fighting, because you're constantly being dogpiled and you're just waiting for that one move that enemy's going to throw. It's like, yep, that's punishable, time to punish. And it's like,
love that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just you're like you can get good at any game. It just depends on how much time. Now, if you want to go to a pro level, that's a whole different bag. That you can't It's not just every week or every other weekend I'm gonna play Smash or something. That is literally like you have to give up your job and get good at it.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I wouldn't recommend doing that.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah. So I think like I don't know why your guys' conversation on that for some reason got me thinking about the whole like difficulty in games and like how everyone's like, oh, you're just not good at the game. It's just like you weren't good at the game at the start either. You had to learn this shit.
No one was. That's all of us sucked.
I've seen like Maximilian dude talk about
is
how like people that complain about modern control users are generally like the worst players. Like
because they're
not
also
your diamond master players, they're your like bronze, silver, gold players.
All right, calm down. Ain't nothing wrong with being gold or bronze, because I was bronze for a while.
Well, the point he's getting at is it's not the high end players, it's the lower end players generally, lower to mid.
No, it's just because they struggled doing the inputs as well, but you do the inputs long enough, you'll learn them. Like I remember I couldn't do there was a time when all of us started playing and we couldn't do the fireball motion. We were like, how am I supposed to swing the stick this fast? But then after a while, it's very like it just comes like second nature. You don't even think about it. And the last kind of thing I'll say about like fighting games is like, if you do want to get into fighting games, and again, you don't have to go super competitive at it. Exactly. If you just like, I just want to get good enough to play with my friends, or even just mess around in like single player mode. There's tons of single player stuff in like Street Fighter and what will be the new Mortal Kombat. But probably the best time if you want to like fight other people, the best time to get into it is like the start of the game, like when it first comes out or like its first couple months, because that is going to be one of the few and if only times when you can actually go online and fight people that also are just as bad as you. Because everyone's...
It also depends on the game. If it's something like Street Fighter, you're more likely to find people at your skill level than something like multiplayer or whatever.
Okay, yes, the anime games are a completely different beast. You are correct, but like like the more popular games like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, when you first hop in, everyone will start being at like your level.
Yeah, it's kind of like with like any multiplayer game when it comes out is like even with COD, it's just like whenever like the movement's been changed or like the new weapons, people are still figuring out like, oh, what's the fucking meta and shit like that.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't feel bad like if you're not like 100% pro gamer yet at anything.
No. Again, it just kind of depends on like the person you are. Are you because for me, I got into fighting games because I'm like, this looks cool and it's really cool when people execute it. But I also, went in accepting that like, I'm bad at this right now, so I'm going to lose a lot. You just kind of accept you're going to lose a lot. But eventually you keep playing and you stop losing. But like Seth said, that's with everything. So
yeah, every game is like, I don't care who says like, oh, this is the hardest game ever. Like unless it's like a troll game, every game is designed to be designed to be winnable.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. Even a multiplayer game.
Yeah. No one, not even LeBron, was good at basketball when he first started. Everyone has to practice and get better. But that kind of went off on a little tangent about fighting games. And last thing I'll say, because this relates to a video I put out, when I put out the, what low rank Street Fighter looks like when I was like messing around in bronze, there are, for as toxic as like sometimes not only the fighting game but just any multiplayer community can be, there is a strong group of people in the fighting game community that are actually like very positive and genuinely want like more people to play and get better. Because when I posted that video, I got flooded with comments of people like, hey man, keep practicing, it's great to see new players, you're doing amazing, you're bit like on a like almost like, where did all this positivity come from? Because anytime we post an Assassin's Creed video, most comments I get are, you're an idiot, shut up, you're wrong opinion.
That's because AC fans are actually unhinged and they need to be put in a mental hospital.
As someone who's on the r/Assassin's Creed subreddit can confirm.
Have you seen this is weirdly off topic, but have you guys seen the whole like Batman Arkham meme stuff about like what that subreddit has turned into?
No.
Look it up. Basically the subreddit has lost its mind because one, there hasn't been a Batman Arkham game in years and probably won't ever be. But also like
we got Gotham Knights. What are you talking about?
The last bit of content was Gotham Knights, so I think those people are like unhinged now. They're so desperate for content. They are literally just like editing they're editing off the bat ears off of Batman's cowl and just calling him man. So like that's just like the running joke. It's just like, man, I love Man Arkham Asylum and shit. This is what happens when you don't have content. You just
go in and like edit the makeup off Joker, so I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Batman fighting not funny guy.
No, yeah, I think they do have a joke. It's kind of like oh guys, it's comedian.
Oh no.
It's the one funny friend.
Oh god. It's the Redditor.
It's the Redditor. I'm not gonna lie, I'm terrified of that supervillain. I am terrified of the Redditor. That is the scariest supervillain I've ever heard of. Oh my gosh.
I do remember like one of the jokes on the Batman Arkham subreddit is like, man, how did Rocksteady get so good at emulating Redditor speak for Joker?
That's good. Okay.
To kind of wrap up the fighting game, like tangent topic, whatever.
Yeah.
For a game series that's about kicking the ever-loving shit of your opponent, it has some of the most welcoming people like you could ever meet. Like when I was in college, I was part of the fighting game club. When I like first like started like hanging out there, they were some of the most welcome people I met on campus. Like even like after we were done playing, they would like ask like, "Hey, you want to come like go eat food at like cookout or whatever?" It was like they made me feel really welcomed.
Yeah.
to hang out with him, and that's something that that's not just a story for me. That's a story I've seen of a lot of other people. It's just like the people in their local community tend to be some of the coolest people you can meet. So it's definitely part of why I've kept playing fighting games for as long as I have, is just a lot of those positive experiences.
The FGC is, which is fighting game community. They're great people, and a lot of like, every community has its toxic people. Everyone, has, the Smash players. I'm joking. But
listen, Smash players have like a different problem, and it's not the toxicity of the community.
no, it's the age range of their partners, is what it
Yeah.
is.
Oh no.
Yeah,
They
that's
practice
the
the wrong kind. I'll tell this joke. They practice the wrong kind of grooming.
Oh, no.
There was a couple little like I guess cliques at college for like the games. Like there was like the fighting game people, there was the Smash people. They were like totally different environments. Like with Smash, people are a lot more like kind of like serious tryhardy, and then a lot of the fighting game people, like even if the games themselves were more like I guess serious, the fighting game players were having a better time than the Smash
Dude,
players.
I
Generally.
swear, Mortal Kombat, which is the most violent and mature game, like in terms of like the big games, nicest people. Like, I mean, like I said, everyone has like the assholes, but I swear there's so many people who are just like, bro, I heard you wouldn't mercy me. Oh, you did? Oh, Rob, I'm gonna fatality you, and like they just do it and they're okay with it. And it's great. I love it. Also, for whatever reason, and Robert, I don't know if last thing we'll get to Randy, we'll get to a topic you can talk about soon. I promise.
Maybe someday.
I promise.
Maybe someday.
We'll almost done. But like, Robert, have you noticed that like and again, FGC are a very nice community. Have you noticed the nicest of these people, or at least like the most polite, are always the grapplers? I swear, anyone who mains like grapplers like Zangief for Kodokan or any of these people always are really nice in person and the most degenerate just assholes in game. Like we'll just rip off half of your health bar and then like turn to you and be like, yeah, good game, man. That was a great time.
Yeah.
We should play more. That was fun.
Yeah, no, there was one of my friends who played King in Tekken 7.
Oh my
It's like,
god, yeah.
God, I hated fighting as King. He was one of like the coolest people in like my program.
He's super nice. King, by the way, is the grappler of Tekken 7. I should explain that to you too. But they're always like so polite. And I'm like, God, I hate you so much.
I'd
almost-
God, you're
I'd-
such a cool person.
I'd almost just prefer if you were an asshole. It would make this so much easier on me. Stop. But it's fun. Yeah, great sense of community. Okay.
To add on to this fighting game
Just keep adding on.
I don't
Randy will never
Yeah,
talk.
I haven't.
No, yeah, I'm sorry.
I haven't watched any Evo or anything. I'm not really playing any fighting game right now.
Yeah.
But I will say this as sort of related. I've been watching a lot of Lythero. And his videos are like the funniest shit. But the thing I'm always impressed by is the fucking detail of the mods that they always show for DBZ. Like I don't know where they find these mods and like how they're so good, but they're so fucking funny.
So,
like
you want to know something? It's just because like the fighting game community, a lot of them are like artists and like programmers, so that's why they can do that.
Yeah.
But you know what's something wild specifically about Lythero? Is he actually is an animator himself. So a lot of them are like,
oh, I know.
So, but like a couple of the mods are like people that like work for him in his videos. Like the most obvious one is anytime it's like, his Android 16 has his shirt on it, like the one that he sells. And also at one point they mod 2 of the characters to be his pet bunnies.
Oh, yeah.
So like it's people that like
the most recent video.
Yeah. So it's like people that like work for him are like, hey, it'd be funny if we had a video and like you had like you fought like Sonic characters and like half the time they'll make it for him.
That explains why the fucking Mickey Mouse one is so good with the Walt Disney jump scare.
Mickey Mouse on Broly.
Oh my god, that was
amazing.
so good. I love that, and obviously I'm a big fan of the Carl Weezer mod. That's another one.
Wait, what?
Carl Weezer as Frieza.
Now that's an older one. That's an older mod
Frieza.
that they've been running around with. Is the Carl Weezer.
Oh my
I
god.
wish you were strong like Jimmy's mom.
Mom,
Holy shit.
there's only two kinds. There's only two kinds of sex, Jimmy. The sex I have with your mom, and the sex I have with your dad.
Dad.
Oh,
my
I love
God.
him.
Even
I
if
love
you're
it.
not into fighting games, I would recommend anyone to check out Maximilian because he's just really good. If
He's
you want to
amazing.
like learn more about fighting games, he's a great entry point into just
Hmm.
learning about maybe not the technicals of it, but like the culture of fighting games is
Yeah.
probably him. I would recommend. And then if you just want to have a big ass laugh, watch Like Thero. They are
Yeah.
both some of the best players and the dumbest players you've ever seen in a video game.
And if you
Oh,
want to
they're
see some,
so
if
funny.
you want to play a fun little guessing game, Jam has a cool series called Will It Kill.
Oh yeah, and he did
Ooh.
that at Eve. That was the coolest thing. Was like they were playing that game, and they brought like the NetherRealm developer out, like the NetherRealm like I forget what his official, but basically like the Jeff Kaplan, like the program like updater, like media person. And they're playing What It
Ed
Kills. What?
Is that Ed Boon?
No, not Ed Boon. Ed Boon's the director of NetherRealm. I'm talking about the guy that does the combat cast, like the update videos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But they were playing What It Kill, and they brought him out, and they showed like MK. They showed MKX video because that was the last time Reptile was revealed, and then he's like, "Hey, can we see more Reptile?" And he's like, "Sure." And they showed the MK1 reveal of Reptile for the new game, and that was so cool. It was not only Reptile, but like Havoc, who is a character that can rip off his own arms and beat you up with them. And one of the characters from like Deception, who I don't remember her name, but because I didn't
she's like I was a demon, but now I'm kind of like an angel,
Yeah.
I guess, or some shit.
I don't think she didn't used to look like that, which is why I didn't like. She actually used to look like a demon, apparently.
I will say the take on Reptile is very interesting. The fact that which actually kind of makes more sense considering his origins he was just one of the green ninjas, like all the color swap ones, and now he's just a shape-shifting ninja.
Yeah.
But his true form is the Reptile.
Yeah, I think it's great because like Reptile was one of the characters that like really needed a redesign because they kept like making him more of a lizard as like the games went on. And everyone was kind of like, can we just make him a regular person? But like, so
Really?
I think it's a
People
good.
wanted him to look like a regular person.
Oh no, yeah, a lot of people did not. I'm also for stop making him a weird lizard person. I was on team that. Yeah,
That's the coolest design is him like a little monster man. You fuckers are like unoriginal.
look, dude, he's just a big. He looks like the Spider-Man lizard, like the one that he
I'm
fights.
okay with that. I like the big lizard.
Well, that's the great part about this game, Seth, is he's both now. He's both.
Yeah,
he can do.
which is way better than just being like a little man.
I got bored of like the freaky looking lizard. I thought he looked cool as a ninja. Anyway, it's both,
There's
so
plenty
we're
of
both
ninjas.
happy.
You have regular ninjas. You got like well, I mean I say regular even though it's like one's a half demon spawn, the other is an asshole.
Look, I'm fully aware that they're all palette swats of each other because that's how they started. We got the yellow one.
There's
we got the
already
blue
so
one.
many ninjas, bro.
Yeah, and that was the problem with MK11. There wasn't enough in the game. We were missing like half of them.
I'm sorry, Randy.
All right, we're done.
It's
We're
fine.
done with more.
It's
We're
fine.
done with
My
fighting
topic's
game
kind of
talk.
boring anyway.
No, Randy, your topic is interesting because we're gonna be done with fighting games. Go play fighting games. Randy, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about, buddy? I'm sorry.
All right, so I'll start with probably my slightly more boring one, and you guys might have less input on, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Randy,
I got
nothing's
two.
boring. All right, it's about to be super interesting. What is it?
I'm playing it right now. Fucking Roller Coaster Tycoon, super fresh. I know. 1999
Woo!
Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I just played the hell out of this game as a kid, and so
Randy,
I
did
don't
you
know, I
know
guess
that there was a
that's
side
probably-
tournament of Roller Coaster Tycoon at Evo? I'm joking. I'm
Stop.
sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, we're done. We're done. We're done. I had to get that joke out of the way. We're done. I'm sorry.
But again, with I know it was my fresh pick a little while back where I said City Skylines, and this is probably one of the reasons I ended up being an engineer. Not because of Roller Coaster Tycoon, but just in regards to like my brain and the satisfaction of like, I don't know, like managing and like having things work out. And I don't know, that part of like my brain, it's just like, yes, I've made this park efficient and like it gains lots of money at the same time, and I'm just like, this is just nice. Yes.
Yeah, it's like people like games a lot like Satisfactory. It's just kind of putting it all together and just watching it just run in like the best way possible.
It does
Yes, I
seem
never really
like-
got into Satisfactory though. I think it's just like I looked at it and I'm like, this is too much of a grind.
Yeah.
It does seem like
You were
a
about
game
to say,
that's like
Seth, or someone.
I was gonna say it seems like a game that's like good for like maybe not people with OCD, but like OCD tendency type people, where it's like I like having everything in order and having everything run properly. But I don't know, maybe that's just outside looking in.
I mean,
I will say the one thing I know about
I
Roller
won't
Coaster
make
Tycoon-
any comments about me and my coworkers
Okay.
or
will
engineers
say
in
this
general, but
Hmm.
I'll leave that up to you.
I will say this much about like Roller Coaster Tycoon. The only thing I know anything about is the awesome Mr. Bones ride meme. That's the only thing I know about it.
I'm actually not familiar with that.
Had you never seen the thing like I want off Mr. Bones' wild ride or something like that?
I don't think so. I'll look it up
So-
real quick.
So it's a meme where basically a person made a roller coaster tycoon that had a beginning, but it didn't have an end for people to get off on. So basically, he stuck the guests on it to where once you're on, you cannot get off. And I think they can die because they turn into skeletons or something like that.
Oh my
They're on the
god.
ride for so long. So it became a meme where it was called like Mr. Bones Wild Ride, and it's just because people are just riding this roller coaster forever, and there's no way off.
Seth, it's the ride to hell. That's what it is.
All right.
And I love it.
I see some YouTube videos of it. I'll check it out. But that sounds pretty fun. Also, that can also be a fun thing of like similar to The Sims, how you just torture your Sims and just make their life
Yeah.
awful. You can do the same thing with your park guest. Just make their life awful,
Just
which is also
Make them
fun in
not
its
have a
own way.
life.
Yeah,
I
just be
don't
stuck
like
on
them.
Yeah.
so what was the other the
Yeah,
one
topic
that you,
2. I knew
yeah.
it'd be short because I figured it'd just be me going off about. I'm like, yes, satisfaction.
Well, like I just
engineer brain.
I don't know what to ask about it because I've never played it.
I actually got a
Oh, you
question,
made
Randy.
it
Have
to
you,
park.
Okay.
since you played Roller Coaster Tycoon, did you ever play Thrillville? I know Thrillville's like a much more
Didn't.
less Emmy
This is-
version.
This is actually I've only played Roller Coaster Tycoon, and I think I may have played Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 at a friend's house at one point. But I actually never got on beyond this in regards to any other park management games or whatnot. I've been looking at there's a game Park Beyond that either like in early access or like just came out or is about to come out at full release, something like that. And that looks pretty fun. So I'll probably add it to my wish list and just be like, hey Will, if you're ever wanting to be nice, literally just look at my Steam wish list and be like, I just want to be nice to Randy today. And be like, well, there you go. Same thing goes for you guys if you just want to be nice.
I will say this much, Randy. Thrillville is definitely probably not as complex as Roller Coaster Tycoon, but it's interesting because it was made by LucasArts Studios. May they rip in peace. I know that they're
Oh, damn.
technically back, but it's not the same. So Thrillville, the idea was you are trying to get your uncle's like old like theme parks back and up and running and popular. So you're actually on the ground of the theme park and you're building some of the rides and you can customize them. It's really cool, and it can basically you could try to appeal to different guests. You can also meet up with guests and like have social interaction. So there was almost like a very bare bones like Sims element to it as well.
Huh.
you could even, it was kind of weird, but you could also like even like quote unquote romance some of the guests and like make out with them and shit like that,
Oh
which is kind of
gosh,
weird, but
I
whatever.
don't.
This is like
I'm
2005, man.
getting.
They just threw everything at the
2005
wall
was
on this thing.
wildin'.
Yeah. But that was the game I remember playing a lot of in terms of like the roller coaster kind of sim games. But there's also been like a lot of games come out recently too. Like you mentioned Park Beyond. There's one that's all about making these no park to manage. It's just all roller coaster design, and you can make these really crazy elaborate tracks where they can like go off of the rails and shit like that. I'm sorry, I wish I could remember the name of it.
That might
But
be Park Beyond. I don't know. I know Park Beyond. I think is the same thing. You can have them like use a cannon and jump and stuff. It's all sorts of crazy stuff.
Are there any of these kind of like park games that are like VR supported?
there has to
Mm,
be. There's got to be something out there.
There has to be. I know in Park Beyond you can ride on the ride, and I think in later Tycoon games you could. Like I think in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, I think you could. But as you were saying, Seth, about like being able to like custom design tracks and stuff, I mean you could still do that in Roller Coaster Tycoon, but of course, it's very it's kind of basic, especially in comparison to some modern stuff. But I mean, it's still like some of the fun things you can do, especially with like steel roller coasters and stuff like that. Some of the fun inversions and stuff. I mean, it's a good time.
I mean, and I think that's like kind of like, you mentioned it. It's kind of the fun part of just designing something and just seeing it all like come together. So I
And
definitely
like
can
because you
understand
have
the
like
appeal of it.
certain you have like certain ratings and stuff. So like you can't just make the most wild, crazy coaster and expect it to be successful. No one will ride it. They'll be like, it's too
Unless you're a
intense or too
sadist and you're just
nausea.
like, I do want to see people suffer.
Yeah, but like it's too intense or too nausea inducing. So finding that like balance of like excitement, but like you're not making everyone who rides it sick
You're
or
not
like
killing your
so
guests.
scary,
Or killing
yeah,
them, yeah.
or so scary that people aren't gonna ride it. So
All
right, and so
now your second pick.
yeah, my next thing is I haven't played it yet, but I have played the tabletop version. Baldur's Gate, aka D&D, but you don't need to have a dungeon master because it's like all single player basically. I mean, there is
AKA
multiplayer.
the game where you can romance the bear.
I mean,
Well,
yes,
you're not romancing
you
a
can.
bear. You're romancing
Don't
like
kill my
a
king. Don't
druid.
kill my fantasy. All right. I know what I'm doing.
You know
it's
what
actually
you're
a fairly
doing.
I know
common
what I'm
thing
doing.
in D&D whenever like someone can like turn
Where
into a
everyone
different
just-
animal.
Yeah, where everyone just bangs the other party members. I've seen that as a meme where it's just like I'm playing D&D not for the fantasy, but so I can flirt with my friends. I was like, okay.
So I can play it and have tabletop intercourse with my friends.
I was just like, that's
Everyone's-
interesting, but go off, I
everyone-
guess.
Everyone's fantasy.
That's
I
someone's
guess.
fantasy.
Yeah.
But yeah, Baldur's Gate 3. It looks super interesting. I really want to buy it, but I can't justify buying it at this very moment financially because I've just spent a lot of money on other things at the point in time. But yeah, like it seems to be I'm usually not someone for fantasy. I'm more like sci-fi, hence why I'm the dork with the fucking Star Wars tattoo and shit. And also having like I'm really into Mass Effect and stuff like that. I know Drew, you've been playing through Mass Effect 3. Don't worry, listeners. We'll eventually get a Mass Effect 3
I'm doing this
review
one slow
video.
so I don't I get everything.
Yeah. We'll have that eventually. And so I've been kind of lacking in regards to an RPG to play, and this would probably be definitely the most RPG I've played because like you have the Assassin's Creed RPGs. I'm doing air quotes. Like those are very light, I feel, RPG, and then the next step up from that would be like Mass Effect, and then this would be my first like I feel true like RPG. Well, I guess I did play SATOR, Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Yeah.
And like that's an MMORPG.
Yeah.
But I think I actually might prefer the combat in this, having it instead of being real time like SOTOR. and having it be turn-based, kind of more XCOM like, or just
Yeah.
traditional D&D. If you're someone who loves D&D and are familiar with the 5th edition rules, it's that, and like how the classes work and stuff like that. Some of the cool things is they've added like you can do multi-classing, but there aren't really any big restrictions. It's not like I think of the traditional version. I'm not super familiar with this because it's actually been a couple years since I played D&D. But there'd be restrictions like, if you're a certain class, you can't multi-class to another version just because of X, Y, or Z. In this, they're like, oh, you want to be a fucking fighter who can also sometimes cast fireball? Go for it.
Randy, where'd you get
I'm
this
talking
idea
to you,
from?
Drew.
Yeah, I was saying.
Yeah.
This character
Yeah.
could be alive. This character could be a real thing, but no.
Hey,
Someone is being lazy. I'm not talking about you, Randy. I know. I'm talking about someone else.
I know. But yeah, and then there's like, you can play through the entire game co-op. There's two different ways like the online works. You can either have it just be kind of like drop in, drop out, and then so if you're playing with someone who like you don't have a good schedule with them and they can just like hop in and then control one of your like party members, or you can have it be like a from the jump playthrough to where it's you and up to 3 other friends, and you're all custom characters. And I mean, it's basically just like D&D. You go through your adventure. I believe the basics of the story is just you got infected by a mind flayer. You got this little worm good dude growing in your brain. And you gotta get him out, and you don't know how.
Yeah.
And that's literally all I know. But
I
yeah,
can add
pretty
on
much all the.
because,
Yeah, go for it.
yeah. So first off, you said this is Baldur's Gate 3. We should add that there is a Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. Those were
But
actually
they're
designed
super
by,
fucking old.
they are super old.
Wait, they didn't just
so
start
they
with
were
3? What?
Well, you don't
can-
need
yeah,
to necessarily.
They
don't expect
yeah.
you to because the last one came out in like 90s.
Oh my
I think it's
God,
about
that's old.
2000 at that point, but yeah, it is older than dog shit. Like I said, these were some of BioWare's like kind of breakout RPGs on like computers. Like back then they were based on like the D&D rule sets that were out at the time, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, and I think
Yeah,
they did
Baldur's
also an
Gate 2
expansion
was 2000. So I mean, it's been 23 years. They don't necessarily expect you to have played the
Yeah.
last one.
And I think with also Baldur's Gate 2, they had like an expansion come out with that called Throne of Ball. Neat little thing though is I imagine there will be references I don't think there will be too much heavy ties into Baldur's Gate 3 because one, it's not being Baldur's Gate 3 is not being made by BioWare. It's been made by Larian Studios, which I'll get into them later. But Baldur's I haven't played the Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, but actually watching the story behind them, it is really interesting. Like it is BioWare's kind of like, if you want to see how they kind of get their first stab at it, it does play into a very sort of traditional style of like how you think like a big fantasy D&D campaign would go, but they throw in enough little interesting twist about who your main character is, and they kind of have like a really neat explanation of why within the span of like months and stuff like that, your character is able to go from a nobody into practically a god. There's some neat like little lore stuff that they help kind of explain that power level scaling. And the cool thing with Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, as well as some other CRPGs, is they've been re-released a lot. So it's actually fairly easy to get those games. There are remastered versions. Now, granted, the combat is very if you don't understand D&D rule sets and you try to play on the higher difficulty, it's very rough. It very much operates on the idea that you understand what classes and buffs and all this stuff does. But when they re-released these, they had a very adjustable difficulty to pretty much you can knock this game down to a story mode. So you can just in real time watch your party bulldoze through enemies if all you want is just the story of Baldur's Gate. So I understand, like, yeah, you're right, Randy. It's just like they are old and it's tough to get into. But if you're really interested in the story and want to experience them, they're actually not that hard to get into. Just crank down the difficulty, just blitz through like the combat. I think you could even up the speed of the combat so your characters could really quickly just it basically just the party becomes a death ball just running over everything, like what Drew is running over right now.
Yeah.
Moving the chair.
But I'm joking. But yeah, like so that's Baldur's Gate. I haven't been online that much, but I really kind of want to see how BioWare devs are reacting to their old franchise being resurrected and how much attention's being put on it. Because I would be immensely proud. I know I'm just speaking for myself, but
Yeah,
I
I
would
mean,
be
it's
immensely
been
proud.
selling like crazy, and it's been out only like a week or a weekend, basically.
Yeah.
Out on Friday.
And I mean,
Time of recording
I
this.
know some of us don't really use TikTok or don't like it, but like it's been really fun to see fun little like moments that are just like they're not spoilery, the moments that I've seen, but like fun moments that are just like wow, that's a fun interaction or like a ridiculous thing that happened. Like okay, so there's a point to where, and I don't think this is a spoiler at all, to where basically a squirrel like lunges at you and like bites you
Oh
on like
god, yeah.
around your ankle. And then everyone of course just goes, "Well, I'm going to kick the squirrel." Like every streamer's like, "I'm going to kick the squirrel." And then I remember I saw unfortunately it's not just for when you like get a 20, which is a critical roll. It's also just if you pass the check, if you kick it, you punt the shit out of the squirrel. Like you kick it and it just like turns to like there's a giant blood spot where you kicked and you see it just like bounce off a rock. And it's just like, damn. But
I'll still one of the comments I saw in that video is the intrusive thoughts won.
they did. And like everyone's reaction is just like, oh my god, I didn't know I'd kick it that hard. And it's just like, it's Baldur's Gate. I mean, you kicked it and you
the
rolled
option to kick
high.
it.
You kicked
Yeah.
the shit out of it.
You made the choice. You fucking pelted that that squirrel.
You're the bad
yeah.
person.
But yeah, like to add on to that too is, and it's this. I'm not surprised though because this is the studio behind this is Larian Studios, and they're known mostly for the Divinity series before Baldur's Gate 3. Namely, I think the ones that people know is their most recent games, Original Sin 1 and 2, which obviously take a lot of inspirations from like D&D rule sets, but they're not like one-to-one. It's very much takes a lot of its own things, which Randy, I think you would appreciate with like Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. That's where a lot of their XCOM style of combat came from, where it very clearly maps out like this is the grid, this is how much action points you have, and this is how much you have to spend on like an action, you know.
Yeah, I would say
so-
like, I mean, we keep calling it XCOM because that's like the video game like thing that I know people in this podcast are familiar with. But like it plays exactly like if you've ever played tabletop D&D. Like it plays just like it. So
well, I think you're right about the XCOM stuff, just because I think the HUD, like the menus, like remind me a lot of it so much. Where like at least it was this way in Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. I'm not sure about Baldur's Gate 3, but basically it would do the same thing where like this is the area that you can move into and still perform an action, and then this is the area where you can move a little further out, but you will not be able to perform an action, kind of deal.
yeah.
I don't know if that's that case in Baldur's Gate 3, but I imagine it would be, since from what I've seen of the combat, they look very similar to Divinity Original Sin. And once again, you're right. That was kind of a staple of Original Sin 1 and 2 was you could play the whole game in co-op where a friend can join you. And like they can like make their own custom character and whatnot. What I really like too is also, I don't know if it's the case in Baldur's Gate 3, but I thought it was really cool in Original Sin where your friend could also interact in like conversations. So when a choice comes up, like I think just about any time, the other player could challenge the choice that one of the players make during the conversation. They're like, I don't really want to make that choice. I don't want to kill this person. So the game will actually allow the players to pick a stat of like how they persuade the other player, whichever is the highest, like whether it's like persuasion or intimidation or whatever. And then you play rock, paper, scissors. And your
That's
stat
cool.
determines how much you win. So basically, you're playing rock, paper, scissors against your friend to win the argument so that your choice can go through, which is very fun. And it's,
I don't think that's how it works in this, but like, and you know, we'll see. I haven't played the game yet, but I'm super excited for it though, and I'll probably play it next month, or I don't know, maybe we'll see. Maybe when Will gets back from Memphis, I'll just be like, hey, Do you want to buy that game so we can play it together?
Drew,
And if
Yes,
if the
Robert.
combat, yeah.
you know what else has Memphis in it? I'm sorry.
Don't explain the joke to him. Don't explain it to
Oh,
him.
I'm not,
Let
I'm
him be
not.
confused.
No, I think I get it. Yeah.
This is great. That was a good one. That was a good
Anyway,
one,
you were
Robert.
saying, Seth?
Yeah. So I think another thing that's interesting is like the combat in like Divinity, and I imagine it's the same way in Baldur's Gate 3, is they play so much into how much the environment interacts in the combat. So it'd be I remember when
I've
I
seen
played
that.
like Original Sin 2, like, oh, you can have like water or blood even on the ground. Like if your enemies are like soaked in a puddle of blood or whatever, you can actually use some sort of shock spell to electrocute them. Obviously, grease and fire, a staple of
A
like
classic, yeah.
D&D. Yeah. There's
One of the
also
cool
been
things
other-
is like you could be a druid and like change into a spider and shoot like webs at the feet of people and then ignite that on fire. Apparently,
That's really cool. That is really neat. I've also seen things where, at least in the Original Sin 2, I remember one time getting past like a pretty tough fight by essentially like finding an interactable statue in the game and using like a teleportation spell, not on myself like I typically would, but on the statue, so it just squashed like this boss that I was fighting. I'm like, I don't want to deal with this, so I just fucking just dropped the whole statue on them.
you pulled a Obi-Wan with those what are they called? The staff droids.
Oh yeah,
Alright,
yeah.
anyway. Yeah, from episode 3, where he drops them on it, they're about to
I
fight
know.
him.
I
he
know
fights
what you're
Grievous,
talking about. I don't remember the name of the droid either, though. I know exactly what you're
That's alright.
talking about.
I think
yeah, you pulled a
he must have learned
Kenobi.
that from Dooku whenever he did that to him.
Oh yeah, fair.
But yeah, I'm really happy to see about like Baldur's Gate 3 and the attention it's getting, because like I feel like not that Larian Studios wasn't known. Like I said, their Divinity games were very at least with Original Sin 1 and 2 were very well renowned amongst a lot of like RPG fans, but it seems like that Baldur's Gate 3 is finally the title that's getting them now sort of more mainstream recognition. Which is
All
interesting
because you could bang a bear.
See,
it really did start from that. Like it really came up, and like I said, technically you're not. I'll just add this once again. You're not fucking the bear. You're fucking the druid who can turn into a bear.
look, it worked because it got someone like me who doesn't. I want to get into D&D. I've been trying, but
first you need friends.
No, I have those, but one of them is being
People
lazy.
that aren't on the podcast.
Yes.
We don't count.
No one. I'm not talking about anyone in this podcast.
Yeah, I know.
You
Anyway.
know exactly. But yeah, I want to get into it, but like I'm not into that community. I don't know a lot about it. But even someone like me who heard like you can do what with the bear? This is what game? You can do what? If it grabbed my attention, it's like, all right, that's a good sign.
Yeah, it's a massive like role-playing game to where a lot of stuff does come back on itself.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued on that, and then I think it's like
His bear wife finds
it's
out.
100-hour playthrough roughly, and that's just with like one character, one run. And I know there's no microtransactions or like outrageous pre-order stuff or anything like that. Even to a point, to Seth, did you see this? To where on Twitter, like other game devs were like, "This is not the new standard. Baldur's Gate is not the new standard." And I was like, "Damn."
Yeah, I saw that where
really
like
do be
apparently
scared.
people were like were kind of like, oh no, like no, like Baldur's Gate shouldn't be the standard. And like here's the thing, like I understand that like the development behind this game is very different from like other titles where one thing we should add is like this game has been in early access for like about 3 years now. So like
It's been in early
much
access
like
since like mid 2020.
People have been doing
Yeah.
it with a bear for a while.
yeah,
Okay,
well,
no,
like
that's new.
and well, like and mostly
Okay.
it allowed you to like it allowed you to play like the first I believe it was like the first act of the game.
Yeah.
But like they like much like Hades, which is also a really good game. Like that was a game that managed to like it used its time wisely, got feedback from the community, and managed to turn it into like an extremely polished experience. And I think that's kind of the same thing that's happened here too. Is like not only is Larian Studios a really good studio, but it's also because like they use that time in early access to really like make a game and actually complete it, unlike other games in early access.
Yeah, or other games that don't even go into early access,
Yeah.
but say, "Hey, we got to hit that deadline." and
Yeah,
push
maybe
it
some
out.
games that should be in early access, I suppose.
Overwatch 2. Oh my god, wow, my throat. Jesus. That was weird. Yeah, you're
that
right.
that story content finally coming out. Like what, 3 missions, and it turns out it's gonna have to be paid for now. Yeah.
I deleted. I don't know if I told you about that, by the way. I deleted Overwatch. I uninstalled it after I heard about that.
Damn.
I was like, and that was like my favorite game of 2016, 2017. I love, like, you guys know I spent a lot of time into Overwatch. I love that game so much, and I tried to defend it for so long. But after I heard about the story thing, that was my final straw. I was like, fuck this. Fuck this.
It's
game.
like it's really not going to get any better.
The one thing that made me hype for 2, they basically ruined, and I was pissed. I was so pissed off. I uninstalled it that day. I was like, fuck this.
I don't blame you. Like it's kind of off topic. I apologize, but like it really is disappointing to see how that thing. Basically, Overwatch 2 is just Overwatch Plus now. Like it really is.
Bro, it's Overwatch minus in some regards. Like,
yeah, it really is. And so I take it like at the end of the year, you're not going to like you're not going to basically be like, yeah, Overwatch 2 redeemed itself,
dude. No.
Yeah, like it's funny. Like, I'm sorry, Randy. I know we've kind of hijacked this conversation, but it's kind of like with Overwatch 2 now, like I know that they've been putting out like new shorts or whatever, like they did a whole series. I've had no interest in watching it. I've heard they're good quality, and that's great.
I know they're good quality. You know what it is? Here's the thing. I watched a few of them. You know what? Always, and it was upsetting at the first part of Overwatch. It's always origin shit. It's always no, I'm not sorry, Randy. I'm going to rant now. Because the problem with Overwatch is when it came out, a lot of the shorts were the origin stories of heroes, which is fine. It's a new game. I want to know who these people are. That was okay in 2016 when that shit was happening. It is 2023. What is the story of Overwatch? Ever since the most reads say is like the Winston like thing, where like, oh, I'm calling all the heroes back together. Nothing's happened since then. We don't know what that has done. We've just been holding on there, and there's so many characters that we don't even know a lot about. Who is Zenyatta? What is his bullshit? Why does he not get anything?
It's kind of weird to think about that. He's been around since 2016, and we still don't really know his story.
Like, we know Snigbits because of like the in-game conversation he has with people, but like, it's wild. And I don't even want his origin story now. I want to know what happens later. What is the future? What is present day? Stop telling me about the past and the backstory and doing all these shorts for the backstory. Tell me the story of the damn game.
Yeah.
Please. What is the rest of this? These characters that
have some story.
Yes, like these characters that like, okay, I get it. They haven't seen each other in a while because their group got disbanded. Okay, what happens when they're back together? I don't care about the backstory anymore. At this point, like they've almost over fleshed out where I'm like, okay, I don't care that like, oh, this person actually knew this person's father, or these guys actually trained Farah or whatever. I'm like, I don't. Go play give me the actual story and then hint to it in there. I don't need the full comic of everything. But no, they don't want to move forward, and that is what Overwatch's problem is. Not just in the story, but in everything. They just had a really good model at 2016, but they never really expanded it that much. They never moved forward, and they've just kind of been stuck in this rut, and that all culminated into 2, which is why people say like 2 is nothing. It's just another letter because it's the same game. They've just been stuck in the same rut they've been in forever. And they don't know if they want to be like an online like multiplayer service game or like a single player thing, or like, and then it ends up just being nothing at all.
And just not to mention that like a lot of the promises they made of what Overwatch 2 has is like either been ripped out or it's been extremely cut down now.
And that was also pissing off, is just like completely unfulfilled promises. If it came out and it was bad, I would not be as I mean, I'd still be like, it sucks, but I would not be as pissed off as I am right now, as to be like, why aren't we doing anything? Like, if it came out and it was like, okay, it was unpolished and it was bad and it sucked, yeah, that's bad, and I probably would have still given it a negative review, but I wouldn't be as upset about it. Doing nothing or doing like bare minimum after you promise something else is much worse.
Yeah. No, it
Jesus.
honestly is. I guess Blizzard should thank its lucky stars that it put out Diablo 4 and it actually turned out somewhat decent.
Yeah, Diablo 4
because,
actually is apparently really good.
Yeah, like, because like at least that's like somewhat of a reminder that, hey, Blizzard can put out a good game, because like recent things have made it seem like otherwise.
Oh my gosh.
I have no interest in playing Diablo 4. It just, at least it turned out well for them.
Yeah, fair if you like those games. Okay, well, I think that's a lot. Randy, is there anything else you want to talk about Baldur's Gate, or
I'm
can we
sorry,
give it to
you're
Robert
Randy,
now?
yeah.
Yeah, we
You're
did
good.
kind
I
of take
think
it
we can move on. There's
okay.
I'm excited to play it. I'll probably cave because currently, I mean, I'm kind of just playing through what I got.
I will say, I'll
gone
say
through what I have, but there's just a bunch of cool stuff coming out in October.
I'll say
that,
this with,
maybe we'll do a podcast on later.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of cool stuff coming out there. So like right now, I'm kind of in a lull. So
Mhm.
who knows? I might cave,
Yeah.
but I probably shouldn't.
So
I've
I'll
spent
say
too
this
much
with,
this month on other shit.
I'll say this with Baldur's Gate. Probably not now, because again, not the biggest D&D person, but especially since there's co-op, maybe like this would be a great layer down the line. Maybe there's a deal with Game Pass or a slight price drop, or maybe I get like a gift card or something. I would not be opposed to like picking it up in the future. I doubt it'll be a very long time from this. I don't think it'll be.
Well, also like right now, the if Baldur's Gate is coming to Xbox is actually a little iffy right now too.
Oh,
it's
really?
only confirmed to come in PS5. It's because according to the developers,
Stupid Series S.
Yeah, the Series S. It's not that it can't run it. It's like the co-op will not cooperate across systems, like with the Series S to Series X. So, like, because of that, they're holding it back until they can get it fixed.
Even then, I forget if there's crossplay or not between like PC. Well, currently it's just PC is the only thing that's out. But I wonder if there'll be crossplay amongst like all the other systems between PC and PS5.
Like from PS5 to PC, yeah.
I hope
I don't
so.
know. I don't know if they've really explicitly mentioned any sort of support for it, but yeah. Very interesting. And it's kind of a shame, especially since like like I said, like you could definitely get the co-op to work on like the Xbox One, but obviously these are very different kinds of games. I don't really know what it could be, because like from like a technical specs, I mean, like, apparently the Steam Deck can run the Baldur's Gate 3 fairly well right now at like 30 frames. So it's like, is it like a technical issue? Is it like a system matchmaking issue? Like I really don't know. It's so fascinating to me though.
Interesting, but that'll be something to look at in the future. For now, in the present, I'm gonna move it over to Robert. Robert, what is your what have you been playing, watching, or listening to? You've had a lot of time to think about it.
So I've been playing through Pikmin 4 over the past couple weeks.
Woo!
It's been a good time. That is good. No, I think...
And that's it for the podcast. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, so Pikmin 4 is mostly what I've been playing. No, I talked about Pikmin as like Pikmin 3 Deluxe is my fresh pick like a few podcasts ago. Pikmin 4 came out. It's been good. It's done a lot of things that I like and some things I really don't like. So I've kind of like mixed on it a little bit. I came off of it overly positive. But I think some of like I guess I got a little burned out of it by the end of it. So that's probably why I'm kind of getting like iffy on it.
Do you think it's like, that's the game, like it's too long, like it overstays its welcome? Or do you think that's because like you played it nonstop for like too long?
I think it's a little bit of both, really. But it is one of the longer Pikmin games because it takes a lot of stuff from Pikmin 2, like notably the caves. Because the thing of like Pikmin is that the first game is like this real time strategy game where you have to keep the time of day in mind, since you only have so much time in the day to like grow Pikmin, get your ship parts, whatnot. Pikmin 2 has the caves where time completely stops, and the strategy goes from time management to resource management,
Hmm.
which is the form of your Pikmin. And Pikmin 4 kind of does a little bit of both. Um, there is a mode that is essentially just Pikmin 1 again for people who really wanted that. And then the main game is it takes a lot from like Pikmin 2, where you get these underground caves where you can do different like puzzle solving based on like the kinds of Pikmin you have and can bring into the caves. I think that part of the game is done really well. It definitely took a lot of what 2 tried and fleshed it out to be a much more like polished experience. Because the caves in Pikmin 2 were like randomly generated for the most part. They had like level templates, but they kind of blended together after a while. So it's like it's nice to have like more of a, I guess, set like motif for a lot of these caves. Like there are some like templates, like oh, one might take place in like a playhouse, other might take place in like a little aquarium. There's
Hmm.
still like those kind of gimmicks, but I think the levels themselves are much more interesting to like go through. Um,
Mhm.
but kind of what my problem oh, I didn't even talk about the challenge modes they did for Pikmin 4. We backtracked at that real quick.
Yeah.
They introduced like these little challenge things called like Dandori challenges or Dandori battles, which is basically just managing like multiple Pikmin doing multiple things at once. It's essentially testing like your multitasking skills. Like, hey, you need to kill every enemy in this level within like a few minutes, or can you get all the like the treasures before time runs out? Kind of those kinds of things. I think those are really fun.
Hmm.
But kind of what I don't like is something that's like a like hard baked into the game, which is the targeting system.
Uh,
Um, mhm.
I was saying, oh,
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
because there's like a lock-on system to where if you throw Pikmin at a part, the more Pikmin you throw at like a treasure to carry it, the faster it'll go. And there's usually like a set minimum amount, like, oh, to carry like this battery, you need like 10 Pikmin. In like the other games, you could throw like 15 of it at once and like carry it. But in like Pikmin 4, once you throw 10 at it, it physically won't let you throw more Pikmin at it. So
Hmm.
it kind of gets frustrating. It's like, I want this amount of Pikmin to carry this, but the game won't let me. So it's like I'm kind of like fighting the game to do what I want. And this is
Yeah.
especially bad when there's multiple things right next to each other. Like there's like a specific challenge map where it's like you need to kill 100 enemies in like a minute, and there's a bunch of like these tiny little bugs like all over the place, and it like forces you to lock on a one even if you want to throw like the Pikmin somewhere else. The game's like, nope, you're throwing it here now. So I've
Hmm.
had to reset that one like so many times just to like finish it because oh, it threw a purple Pikmin where I didn't want to, and then they got eaten. It's like, well, shit, I have to restart this challenge again.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's stuff like that that got really infuriating.
Yeah.
And I also recognize if talking about Pikmin, it sounds like complete gibberish to someone who doesn't know what Pikmin is,
I mean,
because
kind
it's
of, yeah.
definitely
A general idea. I,
yeah.
Yeah.
I I think though the thing about it is like, despite those negatives though, Robert, one thing that's always stood out to me about the Pikmin series though is I've always felt like it's had like a very like interesting sense of like charm and design with like its like levels because everything is like tiny. Um,
Yeah.
and I always thought that was like cool as a kid, growing up and like never playing Pikmin, but seeing my
Mhm.
friends play it or watching like a trailer for it. And I mean, if there's one thing that like Nintendo is good at, is it's good at making that stuff look really good. And the things I've seen with Pikmin 4 is it looks like a really good like HD visual style game, which is not much of what you can say about a lot of like Switch releases, you know? Like
Mhm.
typically the visuals on the Switch just don't um they don't look the best, Megan.
Right. Yeah. So
So
this
I guess I'm wondering like do you think like there's like a good like better visuals now, or like what's
the
the deal?
the visuals definitely took a step up because Nintendo actually used Unreal Engine to make this game. In the previous games like Pikmin 3, they used like their own in-house engine for it. But with Pikmin 4, they took the jump to Unreal, and I think it's definitely paid off because like if you just look at the environments compared to like 2 or 3 and 4, 4 definitely feels much more lived in, like you're actually exploring like these gardens and such that like you kind of had to use your imagination a little bit for like the older games to really get that feel, but this definitely kind of feels like the game's inspiration, which is you can find all these little things in like lived in like environments like a garden and whatnot. Um, and it's shown like the different treasures you can find, or like they could either be kinds of little fruits, maybe like like sandwich toppers or whatever that are like little swords, or even like old like little gaming stuff. Like in some of the dungeons, you can find like a GameCube controller or Joy Cons or like a Game Boy game. It's like they they really
People are just
make
throwing the shit away, man.
yeah
The
yeah, but
orange
it's like
GameCube is down there.
but it's like they really have like a distinct like motif for Pikmin 4, and I think it's definitely the most like visually striking of all the games.
That's good. That's good to hear. Um, One thing I don't know why, but like suddenly my memory's being unlocked from this. Do you remember Chibi Robo?
Barely. I didn't play it, but I am aware of it.
The only, and I'm sorry, I know that's like so off topic, but I just remember like that was another like kind of GameCube game that I always thought was interesting. I kind of wonder, you know, uh, why there hasn't been like another Chibi Robo in a while. Maybe it's because of what you just said there, just like I barely remember it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a niche thing.
It didn't sell
It's
well,
like
is probably
Yeah.
why.
because that's the thing
I
of
just
like Pikmin is that it's such like an out of left field like idea. Because like the idea stemmed from like this tech demo for the GameCube called like Super Mario 128, where it was just 128 Marios running around this environment doing like their own things. And that's kind of where Pikmin like branched off from.
Interesting.
that's
I've never
fun.
heard of that.
Hmm.
Mhm. So it
I
actually jumped from like a tech demo to like its own like full-fledged game.
I think I vaguely remember hearing something about that, but that is kind of cool though.
Mhm.
What about the music though? Like I think one thing that Nintendo has always been good about is making sure like their music is very good in their games.
There's a lot of like really good like ambient music. Like something that I've always loved about the Pikmin games is like they have a very relaxing soundtrack to listen to. Like just look up like the Forest of Hope theme from Pikmin 1 on YouTube. It is like one of the most like calming songs in like a video game. And Pikmin 4 definitely still has a lot of that like kind of serene sounding like music. More so in like the overworld. Like it feels a lot more like pleasant than like high action. Even in like the caves, it definitely has like a more like slower, like more ambient soundtrack rather than something that really like stands out, you know?
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, Pikmin is just because it's such like an out there like series. It's like a lot of people don't really know about it besides like, oh, there's Captain Olimar from Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
cause
that's probably where most people know him from.
yeah, cause like I don't know how I got into Pikmin. I just remember that it was one of like the first GameCube games I had. So it was like something I just always knew about because I guess my parents got it for me and my brother because it looked cute or something. Like I don't know
Yeah.
how we knew of Pikmin. We just had it.
I swear, I don't remember if it was Pikmin or a different game series, but I'm pretty sure like there was at one point where like Pikmin wasn't really selling well, but the only reason that it kept going was because the director of the game just really liked them.
Yeah,
And that's
Miyamoto
That's
it.
is like
That's
Miyamoto's
it's
really good about
Miyamoto,
Pikmin.
which is the guy that does Smash Brothers, and so
No,
you're not gonna tell him
Mario.
no
Yeah,
or
that's
not.
Mario. Yeah.
Sakurai
Or
Smash
sorry,
Bros.
sorry, I'm at Mario. That's my bad. I getting developers mixed up, but like still, it's like it's a big developer, and you're just like, hey, so this series isn't selling well, but and you're just like, but I like all of Mario, so we're gonna make another one. It's like, okay,
Yeah, I think that
Miyamoto really likes the more like out there kind of things.
yeah, I kind of agree with that. And like I
Mhm.
think it's also just a thing where unlike a lot of other I feel like a lot compared to a lot of other companies, like even if something doesn't necessarily sell well, and yeah, it might go dormant for a while, but I feel like Nintendo does something a lot better than most other companies do, which is they are always supporting their like the properties they own. I mean, I know, yes, Metroid, I understand, like it's you guys are
F-Zero,
starving out there,
Star
but
Fox. No, Metroid's
yeah.
eating pretty good right now. It's Star Fox and F-Zero. That's like
And here's the thing, I have no doubt in my mind that eventually there will come a time. There will come a time whenever they will make their names known again. Um but like I think Nintendo better than other studios is good about like supporting a lot of those kinds of like those properties.
yeah, like a core like design philosophy for Nintendo is that for their major franchises, they don't like to do a new entry unless they can make something that pushes the franchise forward. Like, aside from like a few exceptions for like Mario games, you can generally see that with their titles, is that a lot of their stuff tries something new. Like, let's take like 3D Mario for example. Like, you get Super Mario 64, which is kind of just throwing Mario into 3D, it being like the first like really prominent 3D platformer, if not the first 3D platform in general. Then you get
Right.
Mario Sunshine, where it kind of plays with like the hover mechanic in different ways to like use water to like solve puzzles and move around the environment. Then you get Mario Galaxy, where you get gravity as like the mechanic, and then like you get Mario Odyssey, where you get the movement of like Cappy and whatnot, and like the hat transformations. All those games do something different, and that kind of applies to a lot of their other games. Is that no two Nintendo games are really super alike for the most part. And that's something that I can definitely respect, even if sometimes it's like, I really want this one thing, but I understand that they're always going to do something different. Like even
Yeah.
if like if you take like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, it's like Breath of the Wild did something completely different with Zelda than what it like has been doing for the longest time. And then you get Tears of the Kingdom, which expands upon Breath of the Wild. It's not just a carbon copy of the game, even if a lot of the core systems are there. There's a lot of things in Tears of the Kingdom that you can only do there, not in like Breath of the Wild. And the inverse is honestly true too. Like there's things in Breath of the Wild you can do that you can't do in Tears of the Kingdom.
I think that's why, like, for example, like we saw like a Nintendo Direct not too long ago where they finally like showed up like another 2D Mario after it's been so long since there's been one, you know. And I think it's because like it is something that just like it's a beloved franchise obviously, but I think it's also because like you said, Nintendo isn't going to come back to something until it feels like it has a good reason to.
Mm-hmm. So like that's the thing of like even something like Smash Brothers. There may not be a new Smash Brothers for a long time because Ultimate did so many things like new and different that
Right.
it's really going to stand out. And it's like, well, where do we take the series from Ultimate?
And I really feel like that also that's another one of those things where another factor is Sakurai. Like I feel like without having because it seems very unlikely he will return again, and without having the kind of like that figurehead there, it's kind of hard to pull off. Not impossible, but like it'd be hard to imagine them trying to come back to Smash without the man who kind of made it Smash.
So he actually talked about this on his YouTube channel because if anyone isn't aware, Masahiro Sakurai has a YouTube channel about like game creation, and he goes into a lot of like different concepts or even like the background of like development in some of the games he's worked on. Like, just take a look at this like series of him like making like Kirby's Adventure, Smash Brothers, all that kind of stuff. and just it's nice to see like his side of like the development and kind of like his thought process for some of the stuff. In one of his more recent videos, he actually addressed this. He said that he can't really picture anybody else heading Smash Brothers. Like he doesn't really he himself doesn't see the series really continuing without him, at least at the moment. Like it's definitely a case of if there is no Sakurai, there is no Smash Brothers. Um,
Yeah, especially since it's like, usually like with the developer, if there is like if he does want that series to continue, but maybe not under his like wing, you usually could see him like picking out like a successor or something. And I don't really see that happening here with that with Smash.
he himself said that he doesn't really have like someone in mind that could head Smash Brothers like him.
I mean, also
Just
like the way they did Smash Bros. Ultimate, the whole like everyone is here. It'd be almost an impossible task to do. Like for the next one, you just have to like do everything again and just like add. Like it'd be more like just an expansion to it. Like it'd be so hard to one up the previous one.
Oh, I think it'd be easier to one up it. They just got to bring Dante back or bring Dante in. I mean, sorry.
I mean, I
I'm
agree
still
with
salty
that.
about that.
Smash Ultimate is a fucking legal nightmare at this point.
Oh,
With
it
how
should
many
be impossible.
properties.
Smash Brothers, just by its nature, should not work. There's so many properties that should. There are characters that were in Smash Brothers that should never have been in a Nintendo platform. Talk about Joker, and it's just there's so many things about Smash Brothers that shouldn't work and legally should never like is inconceivable, but it just is, and it's not like a fan game or whatever. So that's why, like, honestly, yeah, like, Ultimate's amazing, and I'm glad it exists, but it basically was like, we lived in the golden age of Smash, and now it's probably, like,
Yeah.
it's probably done. Like,
So
the only thing
only
moving
thing-
forward will be,
Sometimes
like,
franchises should end. Like I think
Yeah.
that's something that I think in general our media could learn is like sometimes a story can just end, and we don't need to come back to it all the time.
all
I can
I
s- the-
want is to see like rollback netcode in Smash, like a version of like Smash Ultimate on like the Nintendo's next console that
yeah.
has rollback netcode. You do
That-
that, I'm set. I am
I'm gonna say
perfectly
that
fucking happy
that I
with the
can
ending
see
there.
is like it being ported to just the next system. Like that is, and that's it. I don't think there will ever be another version of Smash Brothers. I think like just in the future it'll just be like, yeah, it just keeps getting moved over and over and over, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
Hey, I mean, like if you could port Skyrim over and over, I think you could
Yeah.
port. And you know what? I'll say this much, like especially with you could definitely date when we recorded this episode with the news of like Red Dead Redemption 2 coming out. Like at least with like I think with the Smash and with Skyrim, they would probably try to do something like maybe new with it or whatever. Like maybe I don't know, like maybe just add something like a little bit more like rollback netcode versus just like yeah, we're re-releasing Red Dead Redemption 2 and it's gonna be fucking it's probably gonna be still fucking 30 frames per second on the PS4.
Probably.
I really think
Yep.
the only people who won with that today's announcement is like Switch owners.
Like someone who doesn't have like a PS3 or 360 or just any modern Xbox.
Yeah. God. Come on, Rockstar.
Well,
But yeah, I think like I could definitely see, especially with I know this past week there's been more fuel to the fire of a supposed Nintendo's next console potentially coming out sometime next year. I could definitely see them like being like Smash Ultimate revamped or whatever the shit coming out for that system.
Smash Ultimate
More
Yeah.
Ultimate. This time it's personal.
Smash Ultimate
yeah.
too, Electric Boogaloo.
So then, I just have like a quick second topic.
Yeah.
Because I've been going through a couple Zelda games that I've actually never finished before. I've been playing Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons from like the Game Boy Color, because they added those onto the Switch Online like a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, okay, after I beat Pikmin, I think I want to go through and maybe finally finish these games, because those are the only two Zelda games I have not finished, like main Zelda games.
Mhm.
So I've been doing that, and I'm kind of pretty mixed on Oracle of Seasons at least right now. Because it's definitely aged a lot in terms of like its core gameplay. Because it has an open-ended design almost like the original Legend of Zelda, which this is actually something I just learned earlier today, was that Oracle of Seasons started out as a Game Boy Color port of the original Legend of Zelda game.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it was because originally the developer team at Capcom that was in charge of like the Oracle games, they wanted to do a port of Zelda 1 before doing like original Zelda games for the console. But they ended up just doing like two completely original games after talking to like Shigeru Miyamoto. He was like, you could do like a trilogy of games, but they never ended up doing a full trilogy because they were going to do Oracle of like Seasons, Ages, and Sun of Courage, like the three like elements of the Triforce, Wisdom, Power, Courage, whatever. Um,
Hmm.
the three colors, but they ended up just doing Seasons and Ages, so you get one where you change the seasons, one where you travel through time. They had both kind of different like design philosophies, but the games like connected in a way. Like if you beat Oracle of Seasons, you'll get a little passcode that you can put into Oracle of Ages, and you can get some like little goodies, and maybe some characters from like Oracle of Seasons will show up. And then the inverse is also true for Ages. Um, and you would get like a definitive ending where you like fight Ganon and whatnot. So it had some neat ideas, but it's definitely a game that like I go up and down with in my opinion on, kind of just depending on like what's going on with like, am I getting like lost or confused at a puzzle or whatnot. I feel like Seasons is a little too arbitrary at points, kind of like the original Legend of Zelda, where it's like, okay, your next destination is wherever, like when I was going like to the last dungeon, it's like, all right, it's out there somewhere, go find it. I'm like, thanks. It's like you kind of have a clue in terms of, if you just look at your map and say like, oh, I've not explored this area yet, let's try to go here now. But it's like that kind of design doesn't work at points for me, because it's like I want some kind of direction for the games. Like even like Breath of the Wild being like as open-ended as it is, there's still like people you could talk to that could point you to where you need to go. And like even for like side quests, if it doesn't mark your objective, it marks the person you can talk to for the hint. And there's nothing really like that in Seasons and Ages. You kind of have to, remember that, because that's just how games really were back. These came out in like what, 2000, 2001. But
Yeah.
it's still an older design philosophy, and then the game itself just has a lot of pausing and unpausing to like change out your items, because you only get two item slots, because surprise surprise, the original Game Boy had, four buttons and a D-pad, so there's really only so much you could do with that. So it feels like you're just constantly switching out items, which it's neat what they do with some of the puzzle solving, but it kind of gets tedious after a while. Because like, okay, I have the sword and like the cape now to jump over a hole. And up, nope, now I need to go get the bombs out to go bomb a wall. Up, now I gotta switch out the cape for like something else to do this thing. It's like you're just constantly switching things in and out depending on the situation, and it kind of slows things down a lot. Um, the game that came before it, Link's Awakening, also had that problem, which it got fixed in like the Switch version, because some of that stuff became like permanent upgrades. So you're just kind of switching like less, and you have more spaces to, you know, put items on. So it's like it's definitely something that's like irritated me through playing through Seasons. That I definitely hope that they do like a Link's Awakening like HD treatment for these games, because I think they're pretty good for what they do. They're not heavy on the story. They're more on like some of the exploration and puzzle solving elements, and like different like types of combat. So it'd be nice to kind of see like a more modern version of that and how that could play out. Kind of like they did with Link's Awakening. So yeah, that's what I've been going through. I want to try to finish it in like a couple days because I'm like near the end of it now. But that's been like my weekend project is just going through Oracle of Seasons.
Hmm.
I
Interesting.
just yeah. And I know Drew wants to wrap this up quick, but
Yeah.
I will say that like I get what you mean about like kind of like these older games where they're fun to get into, and I know a lot of people like miss out like, oh, I miss it when games didn't tell you everything, and like I like just discovering things. Those moments are great. Don't get me wrong. It's just, but at the same time, it's like it those moments can also really test your patience.
Yeah, it's like I've had to look up a guide on like several points, and I wanted to go through as little as possible with the guide, but I was watching a video earlier by like Good Vibes Gaming. They did videos on Oracle of Seasons and Ages, just kind of talking about the games, and I definitely feel less bad about it after like the guys in those videos being like, yeah, we've had to use like guides to like look up the solution here because it wasn't very like intuitive. In a couple of like the little like mini boss puzzles, I had the exact same like thought process as him. I was like, okay, why can I pick up this enemy, but I can't pick up any other enemy in the game? What hints at me to do this? It's like stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that could be communicated a lot better.
Yeah, like sometimes it's not like not everything was like perfect game design back then. Sometimes it's just bullshit, man. And we need to accept that.
All right.
All right, Drew. I know that
Well,
you've been waiting.
yeah, I think that's about it. I didn't want to cut him off.
Yeah.
But I think that is about everything. Normally this is where we do the fresh picks, but that has been the entire podcast. So,
Yeah.
I want to thank everyone for joining me, and I appreciate that we all brought, various different content to talk about. I know not all of us could talk about everything, but I think it led to some good discussions, and I appreciate you guys. So I want to thank Seth, coming in, talking about the games you've been playing.
If there's one thing I'm good at, is just talk about some random bullshit. And that's really
Yeah.
about it.
You can fill some time. Good job. Robert, thank you for coming in and definitely talking about some fighting games with me. It's always good to have another person to talk to about that.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. And of course, Randy, I thank you for coming in and being very patient, waiting for us to be
I
finished.
waited my turn to talk about my little engineer game and D&D.
And you got there. And
I mean,
of course,
it's so fresh. It came out in 1999, guys. Fresh.
Randy, I hope my time with you taught you a new meme that you can look into now.
Yeah.
the most
At the
important
very
thing.
least, I hope for that.
All right. And as always, the most important people, I want to thank anyone that's been watching, especially if you've been, anyone that's been listening, especially if you've been listening this far. Definitely a different kind of episode, but we appreciate you guys. So as always, have fun and stay safe out there. Goodbye.